Good afternoon, everyone. iTech India welcomes all the participants for today's National Distance Learning Seminar session. Today's topic is counseling high-risk groups and bridge population, and the speaker is Ms. Shivranjani Kulkarni. Ms. Shivranjani Kulkarni is currently working as Senior Manager Operations in the School of Vocational Education, Tata Institute of Social Sciences, Mumbai. She is a professional in the field of development sector and counseling. She has more than 2 decades of experience in handling large-scale projects, especially in HIV/AIDS and counseling. She has worked with the Maharashtra State AIDS Control Society for 7 years and is working with the Tata Institute of Social Sciences since the last 10 years. Ms. Kulkarni has contributed to the development of various capacity building strategies and manuals for master trainers, supportive supervisors, and counselors while working on Project Saksham for TISS, which was funded by Global Fund Round 7. We welcome you, ma'am, for today's session. Request you to start the session, ma'am.
Thank you, Shweta. I thank you, National Distance Learning Seminar Series, iTech India, for inviting me to conduct this session. And good afternoon, all. So, as Shweta informed, our today's topic is counseling high-risk groups and bridge population. I'm going to use the term key population and high-risk groups interchangeably. Yeah. So let us start looking at the slides, and by end of the session, we can have a few questions. Just a minute. Yeah. Yes. So as you can see in this picture, there are the key population is categorized. There are 4 types of key population. Generally, we look at in the National AIDS Control Program. The first is female sex workers. Then we have men having sex with men, that is MSM. We have intravenous drug users, and we also have transgenders. In the National AIDS Control Program, we also focus on prisoners, but there are so many groups, and so I decided these are the 4 focus groups which I'm going to talk about. These groups also are called as key population or core groups because they are at the core of the population from where the epidemic starts spreading. That is the theory we say. How it works. We need to do intervention with the key population so that the epidemic can be stopped there. Otherwise, if we don't stop the epidemic at that point in time, the population, it is transmitted to the general population through the bridge population groups. And usually truckers and migrant workers are called bridge population. Now these categories, core groups and bridge population, are not exclusive categories. These overlapping, there are many overlapping in these categories. For example, a trucker or drivers group can be part of MSM network, and also transgenders might be in selling sex. Let us look at some data of UNAIDS published in 2018. Actually, rather than, I would like to show you this slide. In this, it is shown in a pictorial manner. If you see the risk of female sex workers, it is 13 times higher than the general population. In IDUs, the risk of HIV transmission is 22 times higher who inject drugs. And gay men and other men who have sex with men, the risk of transmission is 28% higher than the general population. And it is 13 times higher in transgender women. So you can see the risk is quite high, and we really need to work on these groups so that they also can remain healthy and also the epidemic can be controlled. Now, what is the reason? What are the social drivers of the epidemic? First, I would like you to look at these points where the social drivers are making them more vulnerable. The first is marginalization and social exclusion. When a particular social group is forced to live on the fringes rather than the mainstream, this is called marginalization. We can see a lot of social exclusion examples in our society. There are many people or many groups which are excluded. Uh, if we see in the context of our HIV related population groups, the sex workers or the MSM or the transgenders, we do not mainstream them, and therefore they are always on the fringes, and this makes them more vulnerable because there is no social acceptance, and it leads to stigma and discrimination. Like there is a lot of stigma of to a sex worker or to MSM, and there is various examples we can say. There are various examples we can quote of discrimination for these groups. Gender issues, this also plays a major role uh, in the epidemic, because if we see, for example, recently in the situation of COVID, we saw many business or a lot of, they did not used to get work in major cities, and they started going to their native places. Many times they even walk to their native places. Why this happened? Because of poverty they had migrated, and also gender issues, because men, being men, they had a lot of burden of earning for the family, and also women also carry these burden, and therefore gender issues, poverty, migration, this leads to uh, it creates a lot of stress, and also it creates vulnerability in the groups. Now regarding women, how the gender makes them more vulnerable, we can see in the next slide. Just a minute. Just a minute, there is some technical issue. I cannot go to the next slide. Just wait for a
Ma'am, click
minute.
on the slide and then press next.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. As we know, there is physiological vulnerability to women for STI and HIV. If we see our culture, women are socially, economically, and emotionally dependent on men. Though this scenario is changing, especially in urban areas, we can even see it today in rural areas and in some communities or some part of urban area, that still there are a lot of women who are still dependent on men for many things. Either they do not have confidence, or they do not feel equipped that they can handle their own life, or they can handle the stress in their life. Then trafficking and sex work, this is like, all these things are hidden. The trafficking is hidden. We cannot we can see other businesses, for example, the mobile phone selling business, for example, we cannot see the trafficking that way. uh, but the trafficking exists, and a lot of women are the victims of trafficking, and also children. Early marriages, though we know the minimum age of marriage is 18, and now we are even discussing to increase it further, still a lot of early marriages do take place, and then women are more vulnerable in that, like they have children at a very early age, at a young age, and also they don't have the freedom to choose their life. Then also we can see there are a lot of lack of education opportunities for women and girls. It creates the lack of services, access to services. Also, if you see the in the traditional sense, there is male dominance in sexual relations, violence against women, and also despite of all these things, women have the burden of family planning. If we see all the methods, let it be copper tea, let it be pills or the injections, women are they are going for all these family planning methods. Though the family planning methods are available for men, hardly, like very few percent of men are going for those methods. Apart from this, there is lack of affordable and widely available female controlled HIV prevention methods. We always talk about condoms in the program, but as we know, the condoms mostly they are used by men. Though there are female condoms available, hardly very few women might be using those condoms. Means they are not that popular for various reasons, as we know. And also poverty and migration. Because of poverty, migration, women also have to leave their native places and come to bigger cities in searching of job opportunities. So it makes them also vulnerable. Yeah, now there are also psychological factors which lead to vulnerability, like self-esteem or self-concept. We can see like the groups are marginalized, they don't have access to services, they don't have access to various opportunities. This obviously leads to like a lower self-esteem or lower or negative self-concept among them. What happens when they have lower self-esteem? They feel inconfident, they feel very pessimistic, and they feel that they don't have any control over their life. And then they become like they give up certain things, they don't want to try certain things. And we see that like for example ART or other things, they are offered free in the program, but still many a times some people do not want to opt for it because they feel that there is no use of it, why I should make so much of efforts. So like all these are the examples of lower self-esteem. Also mental health issues, like for example if a person is depressed, if a person has major depressive disorder, the person might not feel like to go for ART. Also if you see the other mental health issues, for example bipolar disorder, in the phase of mania the person can become more sexually active, and which might the person might succumb to HIV infection during his sexually active or excited phase. Also addiction is one of the mental health issues which is a major issue, and that also leads to vulnerability to HIV. Then coping mechanisms. Some people, like for example, even if a lot of stress comes, some people can cope up with the stress very nicely, they are very controlled in their overall mechanism. But some people cannot cope up with the stress, and it leads to vulnerability. Also, there are various personality factors, and also the perceived social support. For example, some people, even if they have one single friend, they'll feel like they have a lot of social support. But some people, especially if they have some depressive disorders or dysthymia, they might feel that they hardly have any social support. So if the perceived social support is less, they feel very helpless, and this leads to vulnerability. Also, the life stressors, trauma, these things make people vulnerable. And if we see our groups, the MSM, IDU, sex workers, they all are like quite vulnerable because of all these things. Now, female sex workers, we will see who female sex workers are. Female sex worker is an adult woman who engages in consensual sexual act for money or payment in kind as her principal means of livelihood. Now, types of sex workers. Brothel based. This is a typical brothel we all know. Then street based, lodge based, dhaba based, home based or secret sex workers or highway based. Then bar dancers. There are other categories like mujra or tamasha dancers, devdasis. They also have multiple partners, but they do not consider themselves in the category of sex workers. But yes, in the program, we need to work with them because they have high risk. Now, why do we I would like to go to the previous slide. Here, if we see the interventions are mostly the interventions are done in brothel based sex workers because they are located at one place, and also it is easier to catch them at that particular place. There is a group of women and they are quite accessible. But if you see the home based or secret sex workers, it is most difficult to work with them because nobody knows about their existence, and they are not there as a group. So basically when we want to work with them, we need to find out their network, which is really a very very secret network, and we need to have a lot of confidentiality issues, and therefore it is very difficult to work with them. And also then they face the issues, like for example in brothel based sex workers, like to them there can be peer educators, they can regularly meet them, they can conduct their meetings, the health campaigns are conducted over there. But home based sex workers are deprived of all such facilities, and therefore they are more at risk. Now, why do women become sex workers? Through trafficking. This is a very major cause of why women are, that women are in sex work. I suggest all of you, some of you might have watched the movie Love Sonia. Like, if you have not watched, I request you to watch, because we all work in this field of HIV, and hear how the trafficking networks operate. Like, it is really horrible. They have like shown it properly, and also like they say that it is based on some true story. So whether it is true or not, that we don't know, but really that is the nature. Through trafficking, the women are brought in the sex work. So how they're raped, how they're exploited, how they are sold from one person to another person. So all that side of that particular sex work network, it's shown in that movie. And like, really, if the sex workers who come to us for counseling or for taking medication, we do not have that much time, or even if we try to connect with them, they really don't want to go back to their history and tell us everything. That is really not possible, and that will be very traumatic if we ask them. So we should not ask all these things to them. But if we want to really understand through what they go, we can watch all such movies, which will help us. And there are also some books available written by sex workers. You can even go through those books, and we can see how really horrible it is. And obviously, if they are in such a plight, they will be like most vulnerable. Also, why they are in sex work, there are some other reasons as well, because they lack other options to look after themselves and their families. There are some traditions followed in the community, like Devdasi tradition, and also influence of surroundings. Now, if you talk with the sex workers, they do not want their children, their girls, to be in this profession. But still, because of the influence of the surroundings, sometimes it happens that they are in the same profession. Now, why the FSWs are at risk? We discuss stigma and discrimination. Obviously, they have multiple sex partners, and also presence of STI. Sometimes, for various reasons, poor use of condoms. Now, because of all our efforts in the National AIDS Control Program, the condom use is increased quite a lot. If you go back to 2005 or in the year 2000, that time the condom use was quite less, but compared to that, it is quite high nowadays. But still, the condom used with regular partners is still less. Then also like violence, alcohol and drug use, and also the sexual practices, the anal sex and other types of sexual activities, which leads them to high risk. Also, age and duration in the sex work. Like, if they start early, definitely the risk is quite high. And as long as they are in the profession, the risk is increasing day by day. Now, counseling female sex workers. The very first thing is that non-judgmental attitude. We should look at them as a human being, not as a sex worker or not as a client or not as a patient, because we all have not experienced that type of marginalization, but they have experienced. And therefore, if we show this positive attitude to them, it really makes a difference for them. For example, if you and me, we are working in proper offices, and like we are used to a proper treatment at a given place or at any place, but uh, the sex workers, they hardly experience the non-judgmental attitude at various places, and therefore it is very, very, very important that you should show the non-judgmental attitude. And obviously, the friendly and comfortable environment. The use of certain words or questions should be avoided. For example, the words with negative meaning, like, for example, bad behavior, unethical behavior, or maybe can you do some other job? All these questions should not be addressed, because since they don't have anything to do, they are in this particular profession, and therefore, like, these questions are not relevant, really speaking. Also, use of simple language and communication tools. The visual communication tools should be used. use of all terms which they will understand. And also one important thing is that frequent check of the client's understanding. For example, if you are giving certain instruction, keep in between, I mean, check in between whether they are whether they can comprehend those instructions. So in between, you can ask the questions, or you can like repeat, or you can explain in some different way. So these are the techniques in counseling. Also, as we discussed initially, the addressing self-esteem issues is crucial. Why it is crucial? Because they feel that because of them HIV is spreading, or I mean, they feel that they are doing something unethical, they are doing something illegal, or they are doing something which is not socially acceptable, and therefore usually we see that their self-esteem is poor. And if a person's self-esteem is poor, it is really very difficult to counsel that person. For example, why I should take medicine for myself? Because I feel that I'm important and my body should be healthy. And therefore, I'll take medicines, I'll take all proper care. But if they feel that they are not that important, or they are I mean, they don't have any place in the society, then they blame themselves. And in such a situation, it is difficult to convince them to take medicine. So if we obviously, I know you AR in ART centers, like they are so crowded and you have so many patients or clients to work with. So you cannot do such a rigorous work. But this is one important strategy, and we ask all the TI counselors or TI NGOs to work towards the self-esteem issues of sex workers or any other population groups. Now, counseling female sex workers, it is like any other person. Risk assessment, discuss safe sex practices, condom use and importance of STI checkup, HIV testing. If she's positive, then ART counseling, adherence counseling. One thing regarding adherence counseling, take into consideration the daily schedule and various hassle they face before discussing the adherence issues. For example, if you want to tell the person that you take this till 9 in the morning, but as you know, usually their time of work is at night, and so they don't get up early in the morning. They get up usually quite late, and so there is no use of telling them to take the tablet at 9 o'clock in the morning. So my point is that you just check their daily schedule, at what time do they get up, at what time do they eat, at what time do they sleep, and then advise accordingly. Now, here some simple examples are given, like what type of conversation we can do with sex workers, or maybe in other groups as well. For example, sex can take many forms. Some people have sex through vagina, some have sex through the mouth or through the anus. Can you tell me if you are aware of these different ways of having sex? Or maybe the next question is HIV can be avoided through using a condom. So could you tell me how frequently you use a condom? So these simple type of conditions which we can do with sex workers, or I mean with any type of population, really speaking. Now our next group is men having sex with men and transgenders. Actually, in our National AIDS Control Program, these two groups are considered separately. In NSAP 3, this was the one group. But yeah, some issues are similar, some issues are different. Here, for the sake of convenience, I have put both the groups together. Now, the common terms which are used: Kothis, Panthis, bisexual, or Hijras, or transgenders. And also there is one more category, queer. Like Kothi is a female partner. I mean, Panthi is a Panthi is the, it is considered as a male partner, and Kothi is considered as a female partner. And bisexual, the term is very clear, bisexual, and Hijra or transgender. And another common term which is used is queers. So nowadays we say LGBTQ. So the queer, this means this population group, they do not consider that sex is binary. They feel that we all are human and we should see beyond the boundaries of two genders or two sexes. Now, why these groups are vulnerable? As we know, the reasons are common. For example, anal sex, stigma and discrimination, vulnerability in MSM who sell sex because many are in sex work, then inconsistent and infrequent condom use. Uh, and actually, in this population group, they engage in anal sex, and therefore the risk is quite high. Also, they succumb to sexual exploitation to quite a lot of extent. And early, the sexual activities are sexual activities are started early in life. So these are various factors of vulnerability. Now, counseling SM and TG clients. As we discussed, non-judgmental attitude, this is very important because again, this group, if you see this group, again, this group is on the fringe. They are not in the mainstream and they face a lot of stigma and discrimination. Also, they have a lot of questions about their own self, whether I'm a man or a woman, whether I'm right or wrong, whatever I'm doing, whether it's ethical or unethical. Means there are so many questions about self. And it is possible that if we don't take them into confidence or if we don't respect these groups, like they might not come for the treatment and they might stay infected and they might not take any appropriate measures to keep themselves and others safe. So it is very important that we should have the non-judgmental attitude. We should do the detailed risk assessment. Here again, I have mentioned some simple questioning techniques. Like for example, HIV is passed on from male to male through sex. Have you ever had sex with another man? Can you please tell me how? So these are some simple conversation openers with clients. Also ask about condom use in all the sexual encounters. Asking how often do you use a condom requires a person to estimate the answer rather than do you use a condom every time you have sex, which may draw a socially desirable answer. Ask about problems with the use of a condom during sex with another man as well as with a female partner. This includes the condom breaking or the partner refusing to wear it, and ask all clients about symptoms of sexually transmitted infections. Here in this group, they have a lot of oral STI symptoms as well. So you need to be careful or you need to ensure that you will ask about the symptoms of oral STI as well. Now, life stressors of MSM and TG. I know that in ART counseling center, you do not have time to go in so much of details, but all these things are for your understanding. They have the difficulties with self-acceptance because they have a lot of questions like whether I'm a man, woman, and so on. Then difficulties in coming out, like once they accept that yes, I'm a man, but biologically or at birth, I was a man, but I'm feeling that I'm a woman. So accepting this fact to self, it takes time. And then again, coming out. Coming out means disclosing it to the society, disclosing it to others. That also again takes a lot of time and it requires some special courage. So coming out is one challenge in their life. Then invisibility, because of the stigma and discrimination and the treatment they get from the society, they want to remain invisible. For example, even they want to dress up like a woman, as far as possible, they will try to avoid that. So they are in that sense invisible. Then they also experience discrimination and harassment at various places, relationship issues, then mental health manifestations. Obviously, because of all these stressors, they have mental health manifestation. They have various psychiatric disorders or psychological issues. So HIV counselors should be aware of these stressors and should handle it carefully. And you can refer these clients to other organizations who are working with MSM and TG clients, because they are exclusively working for the population and they can take care of various issues for which you don't have that much time. Now, other counseling requirements of a transgender: hormonal imbalance, then post-surgical complications, because some go for the sex reassignment surgery, and also the social psychological problems of social ostracism, isolation, depression. So for this, a trained counselor is required, and maybe you can refer them. For example, if the client is coming from TI, then no issues. But if the client is not coming from TI, then you can connect them with particular targeted intervention project who are working with TGs or with MSMs. Now, how we should reduce the risk? They can reduce the number of sexual partners. They can use a fresh condom consistently during every act of sex. Moving from more risky sexual act to less risky act. For example, they can practice safer sex, and then engaging in non-penetrative sexual options. It is the same thing like safer sex options. Basically, in all these groups, it can be IDUs, it can be sex workers, or it can be like MSM or transgenders. We need to see the human side of these people. Why people take drugs? There are various reasons: for enjoyment, for feeling relaxed and energetic, a heightened alertness or sensitivity, for medicinal qualities, peer pressure. This is a very important like point, because we see nowadays, even in colleges, not nowadays, I can say since last so many years, in colleges, educational institute, taking drug is becoming very common. So and also they take to avoid troublesome withdrawal symptoms. The individual's background and socioeconomic circumstances also influence the situation. For example, if someone is in the family is taking drugs, then definitely the others also get influenced. Also, we have seen other groups. We also recently there was the Bollywood matter. Also, we can see in sports person as well. They use drugs. So drugs are used for various reasons. Now, in our program, in National AIDS Control Program, we talk about the IDUs, intravenous drug users. It the drugs which are injected include opioids, then stimulants and sedatives. And some substances have other routes of consumption. For example, heroin, it can be smoked, chased or injected, or cocaine. It also can be smoked, snuffed or injected. A person who is habituated to any of these substances may prefer a particular route of drug consumption over the other. Now, why people inject drugs? Though there are other ways of consumption, some people prefer injecting drugs. So why? It is because the perceived faster onset of action of the drug and the resultant euphoria, means you get the instant result. That is one of the reason. Then more economical route of consumption, as the entire quantity of drug consumed enters the bloodstream and is available to produce a high. It is cheaper. Then the use of same drug orally or by smoking is associated with of the available stuff. Injecting route, and also personal preference. Like it through the injecting route only. So this is the personal preference. So there are various reasons why people inject drugs. Now, this terminology is very commonly used in addictions. Youths, sometimes once in a while, in a party or in some social situations, once in a while, if the person is making use of the drug or alcohol, that is called abuse. Then the next level is abuse. Like here, the use is quite excessive. It is beyond social situations. The next step is harmful use. Because excessive use of drugs or alcohol, the person can perform the daily or day-to-day things. For example, going to office or going to college or school or studying or working. All these things are hampered. And then dependence. Dependence is a like stage where the person cannot stay without a particular drug. Particular
Participants are requested to kindly bear with us. Ma'am will join shortly.
Hello, am I audible? Hello.
Yes, ma'am, we can hear you.
Okay. I think the screen
Yeah,
sharing has
screen.
stopped. I'll
Yes,
again.
yes, yes.
Yes, I'll again. I'm so sorry for
Thank you.
this
No problem,
disturbance.
ma'am.
Yeah. Can you look at this? Is the screen visible?
Not yet, ma'am.
Everyone is requested to kindly wait. We are waiting for the connection at the speaker end.
Yeah, Shivaranjani ma'am will join in 2 minutes. Hello.
Hello.
Ma'am, I'll share my screen. Give me 2 minutes.
Okay, yeah. I'm so sorry. There was some technical issue. I don't know why,
No
because
problem, sir.
at my
No
place,
problem, ma'am.
yeah.
Yeah, is the screen visible?
Yes, it is visible to me.
Okay.
Go to the next slide, please.
Yes. Yes, ma'am.
Yes. So I think we had discussed this slide. So was I audible when we discussed this particular slide?
No, ma'am. We had just started.
Okay, yeah. So there are various types of substances which may be injected, which includes opioids, stimulants, and sedatives. Uh, I mean, some substances are even smoked, chased, or injected or snuffed, but because of personal preference or habit, the persons they still would like to inject these drugs. So next slide, Shweta. Hello. Yes. So why people inject drugs? It is because of the perceived faster onset of action, then more economical route of consumption, and it is also considered as cheaper because when you take this through injections, the less quantity is required to like produce the same high. The next slide. We discuss these things like because of habit or personal preference, people go for injecting drugs. And they consider that if you use the same drug orally or by smoking, it is a wastage of a proportion of the available stuff. And also peer group influence is one of the major reason that people would like to go for injecting the drugs. Next. Yeah, I was discussing this slide. There are four terms which are used in type of addiction: use, abuse, harmful use, and dependence. The use is like sometimes if the person uses a drug in a social situations, for example, in parties, it is called use. Then abuse, it is more than once in a while. Like for example, it is a use in apart from parties or apart from social situations. The person even can consume this alone. Then the next term is harmful use. In the harmful use, basically the uh, person starts for example, if the person wants to look for a drug or under the influence of drug, the person will not go to office or school or college, or maybe uh, person need, it must for the person to take a dose of drug to stay active. For example, if the person has habit to have like a particular dose in the morning, the person must have the dose in the morning, otherwise the person cannot function properly. If the person does not get the dose, then they start getting the withdrawal symptoms. So this is called dependence. Yeah, next slide. Basically when the dependence is there, and especially in terms of IDU, when the dependence, they start again and again injecting the drugs, and therefore the risk is increased. Now why the IDUs are vulnerable? All other factors we have seen, but the most important thing is criminalization. We consider themselves as like offenders, uh, because the drug consumption is supposed to be illegal, keeping the drugs with you or carrying the drugs, consumption of the drugs or selling the drugs, everything is like illegal, and therefore it is a criminalization. So this criminalization, because of this, they want to stay hidden, and it leads for more vulnerability. Then early age initiation, all these things usually happen in the like college life or school life. Then sharing of needles, as we know, sharing of needles put them at a high risk. Then unsafe sex, because money is not easily available for drugs, and therefore many girls are in sex work as well. or even boys also do unsafe sex. Also, the unsafe sex is done under the influence of the drugs, and therefore they are at high risk. And also, like other factors as we discussed earlier. Next slide. Now, counseling. Assess the stage of behavior change the client is in. This behavior change, regarding this particular behavior change or the stages, we will see later. But here I would like to just explain you that, for example, if the person is not aware of the negative consequences of the drugs, then we need to counsel that person about the negative consequences. But if the person is quite aware, the person has insight that the person needs, the person himself or herself feels that she should come out of it, then she is at the another area of behavior change. Then that time you should help her in coming out of it. So you need to assess where the person is and then use the appropriate technique. And also, usually if you ask any drug user regarding the use of drug use, uh, they will clearly deny the use of any drug. But you need to slowly and very systematically find out the information. For example, have you ever smoked? When have you smoked? What have you smoked? Like this. So this is called funneling approach. Means you start from a general question and then you go to a very specific question. So slowly the person into confidence. And when the person feels that you are a trustworthy person and you will not misuse any information, so then that time the person will elaborate on the things. The next slide. A comprehensive risk assessment need to be done as in other cases, like the basic details of drug use, complications, what complications have been happened in the past. It can be physical complications like accident or any other illnesses, or other physical issues, then legal, occupational, and so many other complications of life. Then high risk behavior, HIV related knowledge and belief, history of medical and mental illness, and current living status, and motivation level. If the person is motivated to come out of the drug use, then definitely we can help the person a lot. But if the motivation level is less, then it is difficult even for the service provider to help the person. So motivation level is important. And in all the treatments of drug addiction or alcohol use, the motivation is, I mean, the service providers try to increase the motivation. Next slide. Now risk assessment. Again, like we can ask very simple type of questions and non-threatening questions to the client. For example, we know that one route of spread of HIV is through sharing of needles. Have you ever had any instance where you have had to use a syringe or needle? So like this, you can start with some simple questions and non-offending questions. So always start, means don't, here if you see in all the slides before that as well, we always start with some people or some clients we know. Means here we are not directly making allegation on the person. What we are saying, some people do like this, some people do like that, and have you done so? So it is like that. We are like generalizing and slowly systematically finding out the information from that particular person. Next slide, please. Next, I think we have, yeah. Now counseling migrant population. Why to work with the migrant population? Because it is an important source of HIV related, an important source of HIV related vulnerability is mobility and migration. In the current COVID situation, we saw there was exodus of migrants from various major cities to the source places. For example, from Delhi, Ahmedabad, Mumbai, Bangalore, Pune, from various major cities, people were, the migrant workers were going to their native places, and it really created a lot of problems to them. So they really sometimes have to put their life at risk, and so many problems they face in their life. And obviously, they are a vulnerable population. Next slide. Why migrants are covered under NSCP? Now, which type of migrants we cover? Like nowadays we see in every city or even in villages, everywhere we see people, means only native people don't stay there. People from other places also come and stay at those places. But we don't work with all of them. We work with a particular type of migrants. We work with the temporary migrants especially. For example, on construction sites, uh, sometimes at a place for 2 3 years the work of a construction site goes on, and some migrant workers come there from various places of India and they stay there for some months or maybe for a like particular period of time, and again they go back to their native place. If we see, I'll just give you the example of South Maharashtra, where this farming of sugarcane is done. And to work in the sugarcane industry, like for a particular months, for a particular duration, some workers come from some parts of Maharashtra and some come from South India. And they stay there only for that particular period. But the infection rate is quite high in that particular population because of various vulnerabilities they have. Now, female migrants also take up sometimes the transactional sexual activities at the destination location. So the focus is on high-risk migrants. All such high-risk migrants we focus, not all migrants. Shweta, next slide, please. Yes. What are the reasons? Poor access to health services, then low levels of literacy, effects of the socio-cultural patterns of the place they migrate to, and then inadequate public health campaigns. Now, you might wonder, because we do a lot of public health campaign on HIV/AIDS, but many a times I have seen in my experience, like certain places where they work, it might be some industry, it might be construction site. Sometimes the owners do not allow others to come for any campaigning for various reasons. They do not allow, and so though we try hard, sometimes the like awareness is not as good as we want it to be. Then lack of communication skills in the local language, which leads to the feelings of discontinuity, and also the loneliness that increases their sexual risk-taking behavior. Yeah, next slide. They also have lack of support networks because they have temporarily come over there. So definitely they don't have those many strong networks. Also, they're away from family, which creates a lot of stress. There are also myths regarding HIV and STI transmission and life stress. There is a lot of stress because of which they consume alcohol, substance. And also, since they are like shifted from their native place to a new place, there are less social inhibitions. This is a human psychology. When we locate at another place, usually we follow all rules, regulations, social norms, ethics at our own place. But when we go to another place where we feel that nobody recognizes us, nobody knows us, there the inhibitions are quite less. And this leads to like a lot of risk-taking behavior. Also poor self-esteem. Next slide. Now, what can we do for the migrant workers? One way is to give information on HIV/AIDS, then assess the risk. You have group discussions with them and find out exactly what type of activities they do in their free time, and like what is also availability of the things nearby. Then risk perception by the client. They might not be knowing that certain acts can lead to a lot of risk. Options for reducing the risk of transmission. Then also the demonstration of condom use can be done. Clients can be prepared to test for HIV, and also all these pre-test, post-test counseling things will come in that. Then a realistic risk reduction a plan tailored to the client's needs. Obviously, this we do as per our NSCP guidelines. Next slide. migrants, I mean, sometimes their families also come there, but sometimes they don't come with their family. Sometimes they come with, I mean, the couple, the husband and wife come. But whenever possible, the counseling or couple is very necessary. Also explore the support system, friends, family, and employees. The support system from employees is very important when they come to some work at the destination level, because if the employees are giving them some concession, for example, if a person is not well and the employee is sorry, I mean employer, if the employer is allowing him or those persons to go for health checkup, then that will definitely support that person. The support system of family, friends, employers, and even employees, the co-employees, all these support systems are important. And also referrals, you need to give them or provide them the information of lot of local referrals where they can access the services. And also the regular follow-up, what can be the like a follow-up system, because like I have seen at many places the migrant workers, they are not, means they are staying in the middle of the city, but still sometimes they are not knowing where the hospitals are, what are the timings of the hospital, how to go to the hospital, to whom to meet to the hospital, in the hospital. So the systems are available nearby, but they are not aware of all these systems. So linking them, making them aware, giving information, all these things. Next slide. Counseling truckers. Yeah, they spend the long distance trucker. In the NSAP, we focus on long distance trucker because for months together they are away from homes and they are on the highways, which by which they are putting their life at risk. So they are away from the family members for extended period of times. They are more likely to engage in high sexual risk behavior than short distance trucker, because there is a lot of stress and a lot of risk and other things. They may have multiple sexual partners, including female sex workers, or they have other fixed partners on the route where they stop for rest or food. Next slide. This results in a higher prevalence of STIs than the general population. Uh, it is also reported that they have sex with male sexual partners, especially the cleaners. And like there are some studies have been conducted where it is mentioned that the immediate sexual needs appear to take precedence over the possible long-term consequences of unprotected sex. Because what is the immediate need? So they give importance to that immediate need, and rather than the like long-term consequences. Next slide. Their working conditions are harsh. Uh, Also, there is always a risk of robbery, injuries, destruction of their vehicles, and therefore, sort of I mean, their life is full of risk, and therefore their perception is low about the seriousness of HIV infection. Actually, if we see the population of truckers, they have a high knowledge of STI and HIV/AIDS compared to various other groups. But this knowledge is rarely converted into action. Their interpretation of information of HIV/AIDS. Also, they are sexually active age. Most of the truck drivers are quite young, and they are separated from their regular partners for extended period of time. Next slide. Uh, then there is absence of entertainment. They use alcohol. Also, the sex network is quite active and easily accessible on the highways. And all these things put them at risk. And also another important point is that they have significant amount of cash to meet their needs. Yeah, next slide. on the one hand, all these things are there, and on the another hand, like there are limited sexual health services are available on highways. Under NSCP, we have started some STI clinics, or the TI NGOs clinics are there, but otherwise, like usually the health facilities are in the cities or at the villages, but hardly anything is there on the highways. Like if we see the garages on the highway, or maybe like dhabas or hotels are there on the highways, but hardly there are any hospitals on the highways. So they don't have like, and usually truckers drive on the highways and hardly any access to the health services. And here there is power dynamics with the cleaners, and it is reported that many truck drivers and cleaners, they have relations with each other. And usually the cleaners are junior to the truck driver, and they are largely helpless. And therefore we have like more risk of STI and HIV. Next slide. Now, these are the services offered by TI projects: STI clinic, condom promotion, then IC activities, linking truckers to various health services, and linking with them HIV services. So in HIV services, obviously ART services also come. Yeah, again, in the next slides, we will consider like how we can deal with their special needs, because they are not a stable population. This is a mobile population. Yeah. Next slide. Now, so far, we have seen the features or various population groups. Now, why counseling? The counseling is because to empower the person, the client should be able to develop strategies to bring constructive changes in his or her behavior or in her own life. And therefore, we do counseling. But this is something very, very, very broad. But what is our immediate concern? Behavior change. Because we want the person to change his or her own behavior, which will make the person more healthier. And that is what we want through this program. So we want to reduce incidence of new infections, and we want them to practice safe sex. And also those who are positive, we want to like adhere to ART and follow a healthy lifestyle. That is what we want through this program. Next slide. Now, if you say the counseling, the skills are same for example, say the counseling skill, listening skills, then proper communication skills, then explaining the thing in easy and easy manner, which any type of population will understand. So all these things, then reflection, paraphrasing, all these counseling skills are same for this group as well. But the added thing is that we need to have the proper understanding of their issues, which we have just discussed. Also, the pre-ART and ART counseling remains same across all the groups. The ART counseling will go to general population, the same counseling will be done to this population as well. But only the thing is that you need to check their understanding and then accordingly give proper messages. Also, you need to be sensitive enough to understand their psychosocial issues. For example, if you ask a housewife what are her challenges in taking medicines, she might reply in detail. But if you ask a sex worker what are her challenges, she will not talk so much. Or even if she talks, she will not disclose her real life issues to you. So, really speaking, when we say listening skills in counseling, it is not just listening words the client is uttering, but it is like reading between the lines, what the client is exactly saying. Sometimes the client, if you ask, how are you feeling? The client might say, I'm feeling good, I'm okay. By the presence or by the looks, you can make out the client is not really feeling well. So you need to go beyond the words. That is what I want to convey. Yeah, next slide. Now we should see the process of behavior change, because it is always said that in ART center, or for that matter in any other health centers, like the time is very less and there are so much of population, so many clients and so many tasks to do. Like you don't have to like only cater to the clients, but you also have other tasks. You have meetings to attend, you have the data to prepare, data to enter, and so many things. So if you like concise your counseling session and make it more effective, that will be really helpful for you and to the client. So for this, we need to see how behavior change happens. In any behavior change, there are these 5 phases. For example, pre-contemplation. Here, the person does not know that he or she need to make changes in her behavior. Now, contemplation phase. Here, the person feels that some changes should be made, and I need to make some attempt for that. I'll just give you a simple example of weight control, or maybe, for example, we want to lose weight. Like this example is very common. For example, if I want to lose weight, first I should accept that I know the like negative consequences of more weight, or I should reduce my weight so that I'll be more healthy. So if I'm not aware of the consequences, I'm at the pre-contemplation phase. But then if I'm aware of the like bad effects of more weight, then I'm in the contemplation phase. Then preparation is starting preparing for losing weight. In our situation, it is like the patients do not know, the clients do not, I mean, even if they are positive, they don't accept that they are positive. So acceptance should come first and then preparation. When you tell them that you need to take ART for lifelong, and these are the repercussions, and if you don't take, and these are the benefits. So the person should be in the preparation stage for that matter. Like the client is in the denial phase, and if you start telling the client that how ART works, that person will not listen to that. Even if he listens, he will not like internalize that information. And therefore, you should assess where the client is. Now, if the client is in the denial phase, you should counsel for denial only. Then action is actually taking measures. For example, if I want to lose weight, I'm taking some measures. For example, I'm reducing the intake of high calorie food or fried food or roadside food. I'm increasing my intake for healthy food. I'm like increasing my time of exercise and so on. So the same thing applies to our clients as well. For example, if they have accepted and if they want to really take the medicine, then they are in the action mode. Then they might come and tell you, yes, I take the medicine, I took the medicine in the last week, but there were so many side effects, and I could not sleep properly, and so many things. Or maybe the timing you have told me, like at this particular time I should take the medicine every day, but yesterday I took this time, then next day I could not take that point in time because I was busy. So if the person is taking action, then the person might tell you various difficulties in actions, and then you can act on that. And the maintenance phase, this is the most difficult phase. Like you have reached to the objective, or you have started taking medicine, you are on ART, but it is difficult to maintain or sustain or adhere. And then there are chances that the person might relapse. And as healthcare workers, we need to find out exactly what are the challenges in maintenance and work only on those challenges. So if you really assess your client at where the client stands, then it will save a lot of time. Next slide. So we discuss this. If you identify the exact problem, this will save you a lot of time. The client also will get insight and feel motivated. For example, if the client is in the denial mode, and if you are talking about like what are the client is in the denial mode, and if you are like talking about the side effects of the medicine, the person will not absorb that information and your information will go waste. Or on the contrary, the person will fail if there are so many side effects. Better I should not take that medicine. So again, it will have like negative impact. So the counseling should be proper and focused to the problem only. Exact issue should be identified. Now, when we say clients do not adhere to the treatment, you find out the reason. There can be various reasons. For example, forgetting, the person feels unfortunate, feels sad, they have side effects, boredom, fatigue. So, what is the reason? Find out the reason and work on that reason. Next slide. Now, these strategies or these things are very common: empathy, non judgmental attitude, handle the client's emotions. This is very important. And usually, what happens, like in HIV counseling, we have so much of information to give to the client that we hardly give or hardly pay attention to the emotions. For example, the client might not show on his or her face, but the client might be angry, the client might be sad, the client is feeling helpless, the client is feeling apathetic. Means there can be so many things. So you identify the emotion and address that emotion. Next slide. Now the counseling at ART center, it is same to the key population as well as for bridge population, which you do for other groups. So I'm not going to in the details of this. So what is ART? How does it work? What are the benefits of ART? Now there is this new drug TMD. So what is it? What are the benefits of this drug? What are the side effects of ART? So this is like anticipatory guidance. Like beforehand, you are preparing the person for certain things. Then limitations of ART, like it is suppression of virus, but the virus is not killed. So like, and what are the limitations of ART? And also the management of opportunistic infections. Next slide. Now adherence counseling. This is also same for all the groups. So usually what we cover in adherence counseling, what is adherence, importance of adherence and consequences of poor adherence, and treatment and challenges, prepare client to initiate treatment, provide ongoing support for the adherence, then discuss importance of keeping the viral load on the lower side. Because as you know, like if the viral load goes beyond 1000 plus, like then we need to shift them on the next level, second level ART. So why it is important for their own benefit, and also how the person should develop good treatment taking behavior. So these points are same. So I'm not going in the details of that. Next. Now pre-ART or adherence counseling, like in any counseling, use simple language, give daily life examples, cross-check whether the client has followed the information, understand the client's real life problems, and make a suitable treatment plan. And also very important is make use of flip charts or visual material, because it really helps them to give clear understanding of the things. Next. Yeah, here like I have given one example from one of the NACO manuals only, like how we can explain in a simple language. So think of your body uh, as a pot with a tap. When you take ART regularly, the body has enough medicine to fight the virus. After about 12 hours, the level of medicine decreases. This happens because medication only stays in our bodies for a short time. The medicines are excreted from our body like a bottle that has a leak in the bottom. Thus, if we don't take medicines on time, the optimum amount of medicine in the blood will not be maintained, and HIV will get an opportunity to oppose the effect of the medicine. So like this, we should explain in simple language while giving the day-to-day examples. Like here we are saying pot or bottle, like that. Next slide. So we do the counseling in 3 phases: treatment preparedness, treatment commencement, and follow-up. So all these principles should be kept in mind for all these 3 phases. Next. Challenges and constraint to adherence. Treatment related factors. Yeah, because of certain treatment related, for example, side effects. The person is not motivated to continue with the treatment. So these are certain challenges. There are factors related to the attitudes and behaviors of service providers. Many a times our key population persons, for example, sex workers or transgenders or MSM people, they face such type of negative attitudes. Then client-centered factors, health factors. For example, the person is not well, so didn't come to the center to pick up the medicine. Then psychological barriers, as we discussed, there can be like psychological issues. There can be depression, and the person won't continue with the treatment. And then adherence fatigue. And also one more thing I missed to tell you all, when we see many psychological issues, even psychiatric issues in many clients, if we come across such issues, we should immediately refer the person to a psychiatrist. And I think in most of the district level hospitals, the psychiatry departments are there. Then environmental and social factors, because of all such factors. For example, they have not disclosed that they are taking this particular medicine. So every time the person is leaving from house to the hospital, people might ask, where are you going, why you are going? So there might be many questions. And so to avoid that, sometimes people don't feel like to come to the hospital. So there can be such reasons as well. So next slide. Yeah. So now here we will sum up. So these population groups are vulnerable to HIV because of various psychological reasons, psychosocial reasons. While counseling, the counselor needs to understand the reasons of the vulnerability. Marginalization, remember that this is very important. It is the major reason of vulnerability. The counselor needs to carry out the detailed risk assessment of each client. The next. In case of language difficulties or low literacy level, make use of simple language and also utilize visual material. All centers under NACP should work as a team for better results in the treatment and follow-up. This will really give us a very good results if we really work hard as a team. The team between reality center and TI NGOs will definitely help in better adherence. Because sometimes I have seen like certain person from TI NGOs, they are taking the treatment, but sometimes the TI NGO person is not aware of that. It might be because of confidentiality issues as well. But still, if we find out some mechanism to take TI NGO's help whenever it is required, it will definitely give us the better results. Then counseling process should not be limited only for providing HIV related information, but it should also aim to empower the client. I know you have very limited time for that, but sometimes it can be even done in simple ways. For example, just use some encouraging statements. That will also help a lot. Yeah, next.
Thank you, ma'am, for the informative session. Yeah, thank you for the time. Thank you to participants for the patient listening. Just a request, since we have already crossed the stipulated time, I would request the participants, if they have any queries, please feel free to email it to us, and we'll see that if we can reach to Shivaranjani ma'am, and we'll request her to answer those queries. We can end this session for now. Thank you once again.
Yeah, thank you, Shweta, and thank you all participants for your patient listening. Yes, you can, if you feel free, you can email all the questions to me. Like maybe in a day or two, I'll reply to all the questions. Yeah. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, ma'am. Bye.